Welcome everybody to Infinito Kwasi's talk on social media in a time of social movement. We're very happy to present our guest, Alex van Tonder. She is one of South Africa's well-known bloggers, and she has the blog Cape Town Girl. She's also won numerous awards, generally regarded as the Queen of Twitter. Is what I'm told. So we are very lucky to have her here, and very excited to have her come talk to us about social media and how it can be used by NGOs to better the communication that we undertake, and how we can link up with different social movements and what to do and what not to do when it comes to marketing a campaign. Followed by that, we'll have Zaki speaking for about 5 to 10 minutes, so it's half an hour by Alex, and then
hopefully shorter.
Maybe, yeah, a little bit shorter. And then then Zaki for 5 to 10 minutes, and he'll be speaking about the Arab Spring in Tahrir Square and how social media has impacted on revolution. So once we've done that, then we'll open up to the floor, and we hope, hopefully we'll stimulate the debate. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Welcome.
So talk into mine.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about my background, because the blog is relevant and whatever else, but my real background is marketing. I studied copywriting for advertising at the Red and Yellow School, and I ended up going into traditional advertising at an agency called King James. And the kind of clients we've worked on, just to give you a background, are Johnny Walker, Adam Gray, Levi's Jeans, Kalula. So that's been my main job for the last 8 years of my life, and that's really where I come at social media from, is a marketing angle. And I said to Greg when he asked me to speak today, I thought what a nice thing would be to talk about was packaging your ideas for social media, and packaging all ideas, in fact, for mass consumption. Because I think that, look, I work in marketing and I work in advertising, and a lot of the time I realize what we do is fluff. You know, we sell things that people don't need a lot of the time. But I think what you guys do is pretty important. But I think that sometimes the packaging of the ideas lets it down, and it makes it maybe not as accessible to the public as it could be. So what I did, it's very chill. Please just stop me and ask questions, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about, please stop me as well. But I asked Twitter today to give me examples of NGOs they thought they were doing a good job in the online space, so I compiled those, and I'm going to talk very briefly about them. And then the other thing I want to talk about is Kony 2012, because so far that's been the biggest viral explosion ever in the history of the internet, and it's a social cause. And as someone from a branding background, where we have millions and millions at our disposal to create these kinds of viral explosions, we've never been able to do it on this scale. So it is currently being looked at as an amazing case study. Okay, who here is on Facebook? Okay, and then Twitter? Okay, and okay, so most of you are online, and right now there's this race to kind of create content online, because everybody's woken up to the fact that it's really useful and really powerful to spread ideas and to reach people, and I think a lot of people are going about it in the wrong way. You know, we hire these kind of social media gurus, and we hire expensive technology, digital agencies. I'm not talking about you. Guys, your social media is amazing. It's done really well, and your website's optimized from scratch. So I can't really tell you anything like that. But there is this crazy race to kind of go big and be big online. And you know, I see a lot of stuff like this. Like, someone will start a blog, or they'll start a website, they put 1 million buttons all over it, they'll start a Twitter account, they'll start a Foursquare, they start everything they can, because they try to basically what I call colonize the web. So if you search within any strange program, you'll somehow come to this person's website or this course's website. And it's really all it's doing is cluttering stuff up, and I think it's diluting the message a lot of the time. So this to me isn't social media. and the self-promotion stuff as well, continually pushing your content in the faces of people that may not want it. That's not social media for me. The Oatmeal is a webcomic, and he goes viral on a regular basis because his work is funny because it's true.
Can you explain what going viral means?
Okay, going viral is when your idea is good enough for millions and millions of people to share it around the world, so the idea itself becomes contagious, like a virus. So, good examples of this would be, who's familiar with the Kony 2012? Okay. So, I mean, that's a really great example of something. I think it started on a Sunday night, and it peaked by the following Friday, and then by Sunday everyone had decided it was a load of nonsense. But the point is, it took 5 days. Within 5 days, they raised something like 53 million rand. It got 36 million views within 5 days as well. It's now on 85.5 million views. So that's like the best case scenario if you look at its positive sides. Now, what a lot of people do in the social sphere is they've got a cause and they've got an idea and they want to get it out there. So what they do is they spam people, and they become like, you become like a walking bad advert. And a lot of people write on their friends' walls and they send emails and they say stuff like, hey, like my page, I just started this thing, will you vote for me? Hey, this is such a great cause, how can you ignore the fact that 20,000 rhinos are getting their horns chopped off every day? If you do ignore it, you're a bad person, you know? And the Oatmeal here in this comic, he says you don't walk around in real life talking like that. You don't go like, hey, listen, man, I'm really cool. Will you just like tell people you like me so that more people like me so I can be cool, you know? Like I always say, cool is as cool does. So if what you're doing has integrity, it will be picked up on naturally. You shouldn't strive to package yourself as something, or an idea as something that's not. And things that do go viral or get this mass traction online are things that are always hilarious, sad, beautiful, or inspiring. And again, I'm in the marketing side of that. We know very well that people respond very badly to negative messaging. They respond very badly to being guilt-tripped. And what they do respond to, though, is hope and to, something that speaks to the better person within them. And I think that that's something always to bear in mind when you do want people to pick up on your idea and you want your cause to matter to people, is to appeal to the good in them rather than, walk around like a spam bot annoying people, actually. I'm just going to take you through a few things online that people recommend to me. This is Wake Up Call. And it has a Kony-esque, this is the revolution vibe about it, but it's an international site where you can submit a wake-up call to a country and its leaders, and along with other people, you can, other people who are interested in your cause, you can gain traction and you can put plans in place to make it happen. This is a little map of, a big map of all the wake-up calls that they've done so far. And then on that day, the 21st and 2nd, 2012, which was in February, was the one big day that they did the action that they said they would do. So what it does, what a website like this does, is it makes, another problem people have with social issues is that they don't know how to get involved, they don't know what to do. And I think what these sites are doing well is they're giving people an easy way to get involved. So this site goes join, look for an event that's happening in your part of the world, click on the Facebook URL, join it, stay up to date with it, and then take part in it. So they make it very, very easy for you. This is an NGO called To Write Love on Her Arms. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's an Australian NGO, and they are an anti-depression and suicide organisation. And they've got a main website, and they've got a Facebook presence and everything else, and they talk about the fact that they would rather young people come to them instead of do drastic things if they're not in a good space in their lives. And of course it was all inspired by a real story. But then what they've done is they've created this thing called Fear-Verse Dreams, where they go around documenting and they encourage other people to submit their fears, which are very often their dreams. Like, okay, this guy's not a great example, but this girl's fear and her dream is she wants to make a living from singing, but she's always too scared to. Another dream is I'm so scared that when the time comes for me to do something meaningful, I won't do it. So these guys do it really well. They're also quite Kony-esque. They've got an entire shop. So if you cannot actually get involved with the campaign, at least you can buy a shirt and that can help. I'll speak a little more about this buying thing a bit later. Give and Gain. This is a kind of like Facebook for activists. So you can find a cause that works, that you believe in, and you can find other activists, and you can join existing activities that work for causes. So this is their main site. These are a bunch of causes that are happening. So there's a rhinos cause happening. There's a pediatric cardiac foundation. So you can browse through the causes and the categories. You can go through they've got little thumbnails on the right. It's very easy to navigate. And then you can go through the activists and you can become friends with them. So you find like-minded people. This is a great site actually. It's got, sorry, that's a great, I really recommend going to check it out for how they've designed it and the ease of use. And then, yeah, I'm going to talk about Kony. I don't know who's watched the Kony video. Okay, so much to say. The guy, Jason Russell, who created the Kony 2012 movement, if you do a bit of research on him, you'll see that he's an activist, but he's also a performer and a creative and a storyteller and an artist and a director. And if you go through the other videos on the Invisible Children's site, you'll see that some of them are pretty out there. There's one where he and his friends are doing a full-on Grease performance in the aid of some organizational cause, and it heavily features him. Okay? Now that's fine, but I think what it does tell us is that he is an entertainer, first and foremost. And I think that really worked in his advantage when it came to spreading his Get Rid of Joseph Kony message. And the video opens with this: nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come, which is absolutely 100% true. But it really sets the stage for the idea that his message is somehow extremely relevant, you know. And just taking a step back out of the activism world and into brand world, where we're all competing for the same attention. Brands compete for the same attention. Magazines compete for then compete for the attention of movie stars and books and writers. Everyone now competes for the same attention, and everyone has to kind of create content. So who's going to win in this race? It's going to be the guys who understand how to put on a good show. And while this might sound a little bit shallow, I really do think it is important. So Kony then started this show. And the first thing Jason Russell did was he created this villain, who was Joseph Kony. Now, he's been on this course for a long, long time, and it started with a lot of integrity. You know, I'm not questioning the cause at all, but by the time this became mainstream, Joseph Kony had left Uganda in 2006. The Lord's Resistant Army, which is what this entire video is about, defeating, was disbanded years ago as well. So effectively, this massive message came out to defeat someone who was already defeated. He was gone, it was finished. But that didn't stop Jason Russell. So he created this villain, Joseph Kony, and he created a mission. Now there's this whole big trend in business which is called gamifying. And it's everywhere. We're seeing it in marketing, we're seeing it in product design, even banks are using it when they design their programs. And basically what it means is creating a game out of a required interaction. So instead of saying, hey, Joseph Kony's bad, we should stop him, he created a villain, he created a mission, he gave you the tools, and then he created the world within which to go play. This gamifying thing is amazingly interesting, and there's a place in America called the Institute of Play, and what they do is study game tactics. And the reason it's become so big is that almost 50% of Americans spend a lot of time playing games. So they will work a 9-to-5 job, and then they'll come home and spend almost 2 to 4 hours every night playing games. And I don't mean games like Angry Bird or Mario Brothers, like really, really complicated games. So they'll play World of Warcraft or they'll play Eve. And these are games where you have to understand and strategize and think of a whole new world. And these guys have been thinking, why do people spend so much energy doing this? And mostly it's because in our real lives, where we face real challenges, we don't get the reward of 50,000 points. And we don't get the secret mushroom that comes out of the cave. And we don't get these rewards that games give us. So now that people are starting to build game elements into everything, last year I worked on a product for a financial services product actually. You give it your banking details and what it does. Okay, that's frightening.
That sounds good.
But
I did it.
yeah, but you sign over your banking details and they find a way to make saving and not spending money frivolously fun. So so there's a lot of investment in this, and Jason Russell happened to do it kind of incidentally. His mission, right, was to make Joseph Kony famous. Now, if you watch the Jason Russell documentary or this Stop Kony, he uses his son a lot in the video, and the son is so cute, you know, he's this little kid, and he's innocent, and he doesn't understand, and Jason says to his son, why can't we stop him? What's the problem? And the son says, I don't know. So he says, the problem is he's not famous. No one knows who he is. And then this huge dramatic flag marks on the screen and says, you will make him famous. So his call to action was then make Joseph Kony so famous. And by making him famous, everyone will know him and hate him and bring him down. I know he's rigged down, but hey. So that mission though was easy to understand, and people could get behind it, and they could do it by clicking a button. They didn't really. He says no, go print out papers and wallpaper the streets and whatever else. But you didn't have to go that far. You could literally just click a button, and it felt like you were doing something good for the children whom Joseph Kony was abusing and using as soldiers and sex slaves. The other thing that is worth looking at in the Kony video is that its production values are amazing. You know, he uses a proper storytelling format where there's suspense, there's a pivotal action, and then there's a plot development, and then there's resolution at the end. He uses familiar imagery. He uses the widescreens we all know and love. He uses the crowd pans, and this is important because from working in marketing and from working in advertising, and as someone who continually has to come up with new ideas, I don't believe people can process new ideas. I don't think that people can completely take a new idea and accept it. So what I call it, you have to kind of make a sandwich, where you take things that people are used to seeing and you coat it. So you take your first layer of bread, which people are used to. Your filling can be a new idea, but you've got to close it again with bread because, you know, a completely new idea is unreferenceable for most people. And he did this very well. If you look at it, it feels like you've seen it before. It feels like it could be, you know, a Team America, or it could be Armageddon, or it could be any one of these movies that we've all seen so many times before. So we accept it. You know, we go, yeah, there is a bad guy, and we do have to kill him. We have to defeat him. So yeah, we need a montage. Team America is a great film by the creators of South Park, who are satirists on American culture. And they did this song in Team America called We Need a Montage, which was all about how cliched in every great American film or movie or series, there's this emotional montage where we overlay pictures of people doing emotional, dramatic things, and we have a great soundtrack, and you know, afterwards we feel like we've connected with that, and it's real, and it's just so awesome, you know? It almost doesn't mean anything. But he has 3 montages through his movie, and they work. Online, from a marketing point of view, the way we look, in traditional advertising, if we want to get an idea or a campaign out, we look at a campaign as finite. So we go, right, this year's campaign is all about saving the dolphins, or the fact that Nike shoes are the lightest shoes in the world. And we'll work to that, and it will have a beginning and an end, and it's closed. But what online has done is it makes us think kind of in perpetuity. There's no end to it. So now what we approach it in a very different way. It almost becomes like telling a story, and what's the next chapter, what's the development, and I think your storytellers will become more and more important, because no longer is it bang in with an idea and out to bang. What happens next? What happens next? So he tells this amazing story as well, using all these images. And I mean, if you look at the content, like if you go and you actually study all that content, it's not that meaningful. It's maybe a picture of a poster, it's a picture of a bunch of kids, it's an emotional picture of graffiti, whatever else. None of these things are terribly meaningful, but when seen in mass and all together and it never ends, it feels like this huge movement. It feels like something big and amazing, and it's really not easy to kind of create that effect for your own purposes. We do this a lot in traditional marketing. If you can influence an influencer who already has influenced themselves, you can kind of cut your job in half. So this is employed quite a lot in word of mouth marketing, where products are seeded or services are seeded, where you'll identify celebrities and you'll give them a product for free, because the thinking is that if they're seen wearing it or using it, it will then sell. And this does work. So what Kony 2012 did as well is they put all this pressure on high-profile people, and they set up a website where you could message Oprah Winfrey, and you could message Angelina Jolie, and you could message all these people. And what this website did is it tweeted at these celebrities over and over and over and over. And then what these celebrities did is, because every celebrity wants to be seen as important and as in touch with the world, and nobody these days wants to be seen as being not conscious of problems. Is that they picked up on it and they used it as their own kind of propaganda. It became a part of their own brand. And Angelina Jolie said very, with a lot of authority that yes, well, anyone who knows anything or has ever been to Africa knows that Joseph Kony is the one you want dead. Not still bearing in mind the fact that he's 8 years out of the country and whatever else, but no, she knew all about it. And George Kony, he knew all about it as well. And what he really wanted, he said in his interview, was for Joseph Kony to enjoy the same amount of celebrity as him. That's what he really wanted. I promise you George Kony hadn't thought about Joseph Kony before he was tweeted out 100 million times. But these guys did half the job for the campaign. And once the celebrities got on board, then it really just tipped and snowballed and snowballed. Okay, that's the action kit. So if you wanted to be part of the Kony campaign, you paid $15, I think, and you got a box with a poster, 2 bangles, one for you, one for a friend. There was a very emotive shot where you put it together, and you got stickers, so you could go and be a mini activist and go and spread your own message. This I don't think is a bad thing. We are trained to buy stuff, and if we're trained to buy stuff, then let's work with people like that. If people feel better about getting involved with something by giving you money and getting something in return, then use that as an insight. Kony raised $5 million in 48 hours on these little kits, which is crazy. But it's easy for people to understand the transaction of giving money and getting something in return, even if that thing is a piece of paper. People feel better, they can hold it, they can own it, they understand the idea a lot more. When it comes to marketing, in a very traditional sense, a lot of the products we have to market don't really do anything, especially if it's alcohol, especially if it's shoes. There are a million shoe brands out there. There are a million alcoholic drinks. So what we end up doing is we create opinions people can buy. And someone who drinks Johnny Walker Black is saying something very definite about themselves as opposed to someone who drinks Savannah, So people are used to that and they're okay with it. So I think that's something you can definitely use going forward. Let people buy something and be a part of it. And I just spoke about packaging the opinion, branding the dream. That image at the end there was part of, with a little boy and his parents, was part of the Stop Kony 2012 dream. So they were going to reunite all these children that had been taken by Joseph Kony with their parents. This is a very emotive image, and it was then preceded by that Kony captured, and there was another dramatic shot of people changing the world. This stuff is cliched. It's probably not even true. That shot over there, I'm sure, was staged. You know, in fact, almost all the stuff in there is staged. I doubt it was stuff taken from real rallies. And while it's maybe not ethical, there isn't anything actually wrong with it if it's really going to bring your point across either. You know, it's going to tug at the heartstrings, and it's going to help people imagine your end goal. So, yeah, package the dream. Package it in a way that it's relevant to people who you want to target and who you want to get on board. Yeah, isn't that just the most classic piece of modern propaganda you've ever seen in your life? The world agrees Kony is the worst. It's just a made-up newspaper headline. You know, in our world, you cannot have multiple messaging if you're selling a product or a brand. You're always forced to have one idea, and you must carry that through in everything you do, from the packaging of your product to the billboard to the design of the print ad. You cannot have a million messages. You cannot have a million goals. You cannot say, we are Nike, and we make shoes, and we make this, and we make that, and we make that, and we want the world to be great, and we do this, and we do that. You have one message, and slowly, 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 you can start branching out. I don't know if it works in an NGO sense. You know, there's a lot of kind of back and forth on whether Stop Kony was relevant, but there's more to Joseph Kony than just a man who came out of nowhere flinging guns and stealing children. You know, there's a lot more history to that country. There's 20 years of conflict in the country. He arose because, you know, of unjust things that were being done to his people in the first sense. So you can't just simplify it too much. So that's something I warn against. I don't know if it worked in this instance. And that's Jason Russell's son that he keeps looking back to throughout the campaign to really, you know, position himself as a dad who really cares about his son, because that's why he's doing this, is because, you know, he's got a little boy, and he would hate for his little boy to be kidnapped and forced to kill people. That's the angle he keeps using all the time. What he understands is that a love for a child will override anything that you can possibly say to him, you know, and to use that love for a child as a springboard is maybe unethical, but he understands people, and he understood that about people, and he did use it, and it worked. So, yeah. Documentation is 50% of the job. This used to drive me insane, because I now work for myself, so I don't work for a company anymore, but when I did work for a company, I would spend 80% of my time coming up with new ideas for brands and for messaging, and now this is a lot of brain power, and it's a lot of heart and soul. So it's writing radio ads, and it's writing TV, and it's writing messaging, and it's thinking of all the messaging comes together, and you come up with a great campaign, and it's beautiful, and you implement it. And then I must go and talk about the campaign, because if I don't talk about it, no one will know that it happened. And I've learned this the hard way, where, you know, you probably don't deal with awards. But in our industries, we deal with awards, and we have to win awards in order to win new business. So there's this endless pressure to win awards the whole time. And my role, part of my role, was to collate all the information to tell everyone about what we've done in order to win these awards. And it just drove me insane. It's like boiling an egg, and then you spend next 3 days talking about the egg you boiled. But it gets people understanding. It gets people to see it. Someone might only see a poster of your campaign or your cause, but when they can see the whole thing put together, then they can really understand. So if they just see a poster, if they see a TAC or HIV positive poster, and then they go and Google it because they're kind of a little bit unsure, and they do see the whole thing in all its glory, you know, there's a lot more impact for your messaging. So, no. And just on that, it doesn't have to be the real thing when you document. You can use artistic license, I think. The slacktivism word gets thrown around a lot, but we call it life badging, where everyone has started to build their own brand, and they do that through using other brands and pieces of information. So I want you all to know that I'm not just some chick in heels with a dress on. I'm actually quite deep. So I might throw out the fact that I read Nietzsche, and you know, I really didn't like Jonathan Franzen's last book because it was so wordy. So that's what badging is. When you throw things out there to make people understand who you are. And a really easy way to do this is by using brands and by being in the digital space and by liking Facebook pages. So by me liking Kony 2012, I'm telling the world that I'm socially conscious. I care about the children in Uganda. And yeah, I'm not just like some dumb chick, you know? So use that though. Nobody wants to be the dumb idiots who aren't conscious anymore. We do want to care, we do want to get involved, as I'm speaking for the general public now, but you need to help us, show us how. And if that does mean paying 35 Rand for a poster or whatever, that's fine. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Or just liking a Facebook page. I haven't spoken a lot about how to use Facebook and Twitter and things like that because you know, a good idea shouldn't sit in any of those mediums. What happens inevitably if an idea is really good is it jumps out of all the mediums and it kind of gets up into the real world. In a marketing sense, we never ever do anything just in the online space. We never just really start chain mail campaigns or just an app. We always ground it in some kind of real life event or activation or consumer experience that, you know, has a real world element. Because if it just lives online, it dies quickly. You might get traction, but it also won't have any real meaning. It won't have a reason to be relevant to people. So always look at a real life element. You know, never stop the marches, for example. Yeah, there's no such thing as a good idea, only a relevant one. And this is what advertising creatives say to themselves over and over, because we have to think of a million different ways to say something, and if we think of 1,000, 999 will be rejected. So it's not because ideas are bad or because a cause is bad or whatever else, but the relevance of something can really make or break it. We've just come out of a dictator-destroying era. You know, we got Bin Laden, Gaddafi's down, Mugabe's on his way out, and here came Kony, and he was hurting the children. So the time was right for us to get really excited and upset about something like this, even though it wasn't even real anymore. So always look for a way to make it relevant to our time and to the times we live in. And don't be ashamed to write popular culture either. You know, if someone like Paris Hilton, for example, can somehow better your cause because, you know, for whatever reason, because she contracts HIV, you know, if she becomes a springboard that you spring off, then so be it. But always try and find the relevance, because often that is what launches you into any kind of conscious sphere in the first place. And that's my talk.
Thanks very much, Alex. So Zaki is going to not directly respond to that, but build on that for 10 minutes. Zaki, 5 to 10 minutes. And then we're going to open up for some questions. So, yeah.
So I'm a little sleepy, so you have to excuse me. I want to talk about people, our human beings for the first time. Because our image throughout the world was of Arabs as terrorists and Muslims being mad. And that was the image that the media had before. But the way in which the Arab revolutions made Arab people human, and it would never have happened without social media. It would never have happened without social media. So when Muhammad Bouazizi in Tunisia, he was a street vendor, but he was selling vegetables on the side of the road. But he had a degree and he couldn't find a job, and the police were demanding bribes, and all sorts of things terrible happened to him. And eventually he just had enough, and he set himself alight and he burnt to death. And there was an uprising in Tunisia. And within a month or so, they had got rid of one of the worst dictators in Africa. The people just got angry because Tunisia had helped America torture people in their country. They killed people. In detention, there was no free press. The leader was in power for 30 years or out, and so on. But as this happened, Tunisia is a small Arab country. And that started in December 2010. But what then happened is this shifted to Egypt. And in Egypt, a different thing happened. There was a man called Khalid Said. I keep on forgetting his name. Khalid Said. And I really believe that Ndifuna Ukwazi needs to do a Khalid Said lecture every year in which we talk about social media. And what happened to that man is the police beat him to death. And someone captured it on their cell phone. And they put that onto the media. They put it onto the web. And everyone saw it. Now what had happened 2 or 3 years before in Egypt is there was a workers' campaign. Now you'll remember that Egypt is the largest Arab country in Middle East and North Africa. It's the largest Arab country with over 80 million people. And in Egypt, they had the worst of the Arab dictators, Mubarak. And he's the worst in the sense that he gets $1 billion a year. He used to get $1 billion a year from the Americans to maintain dictatorship and control over his people because Egypt supported Israel. So Mubarak put loads and loads and loads of people in jail. He banned the Muslim Brotherhood. The only political party that really was allowed to exist was the National Democratic Party, which was his party. He'd been in power for 30 years and so on. So when Khalid Said died, or was killed, there was a group called the April 6 movement. And a young girl from the April 6 movement developed, I can't remember her name now, she did a personal appeal, a video appeal on Facebook. And she put it up on Facebook. And at the same time, the head of Google in Egypt, Wael al-Ghanim, he put up a page, a Facebook page, We Are All Khalid Said. And that page has millions and millions and millions of likes. And it became the place for starting, when they said they're starting they're going to have a demonstration on the 25th of January in 2011, they expected a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 people to come to the demonstration because they get beaten very badly, they get put in jail, they get tortured and so on. And 10,000 people came. And the police reacted badly, and the next day 100,000 people came. And the way they distributed their messages, this was young people organizing. And the way in which they distributed their messages was through their cell phone, through Facebook, through Twitter. Those were the main ones. Cell phone messages, text, SMSs, Facebook, and Twitter. Now I'm going to give you some statistics about this, and this data comes from a report called the Arab Media Influence Report, or AMIR 2011. And just to give you an idea, the Middle East and North Africa has 65 million internet users. 65 million, right? That means part of Southern Africa, almost everyone is on the internet in the Middle East and in North Africa. Not everyone there is on the internet, but it means if you imagine South Africa, everyone in South Africa is on the internet. That would be the idea. 80 million they expect by 2012. That's now. 30.8% of the population. 30.8% of the population is on the internet, and it's higher than the global average, which is just about 28-29%. Their user growth between 2000 and 2010 went up by 1,000%. And in the Middle East and North Africa, there are 17 million Facebook users. And one of the things to remember is that the fastest growing language on Facebook is Arabic. So the fastest growing language on Facebook is Arabic. Now what happened? You must remember that Twitter, Facebook and all these things can be used for all that sex talk that goes on, the girlfriends that you talk about and so on. So that's all the conversation that goes on. And like everyone tells me when they've gone to church and then the next day they drink themselves to a stupor and so on. So, you know, I have some friends who tell me how drunk they get and then they tell me they've been to church. So that's how people use the internet. But what essentially happened is that there's good and bad that you can do with the internet and social media generally. And Alex gave a very good thing of how people can use it badly. You can use it badly, but the very important thing to remember is you can use it for evolution and for change, but you can also use it. It can also be used to repress, to watch, and so on. So the internet, the CIA monitored all the tweets that were coming out of Egypt, as did this marketing company. They both did it. And the CIA wanted to see, of course, what was going on. But this Egyptian company, or this Middle East company that did it, looked at 10 million, there are 10 million Twitter and Facebook conversations every day in the Middle East and North Africa. And they monitored those 10 million for a month, or a period of 3 months. And what they found is that in January, when the Egyptian revolution began, there were 1.6 million people talking about Egypt across the Middle East and North Africa, or sending messages or say, come, go to this, or go to that, or go to the next thing. And by February, that had doubled to 3.3 million people talking about. So in 1 month, the number of conversations on the internet about Egypt and its revolt doubled. Now, I'd explain to you what happened in relation to Khalid Said, but let me make two other points before I speak about how they monitored and how this changed. In 2010, 57% of conversation among Arab people, 57% of conversation on the internet was about salary, income, jobs, minimum wage. They were all socioeconomic, housing, corruption, and police brutality. So the political conversation on Twitter and so on in the Middle East in 2010 was all about social and economic grievances. In 2011, the political conversation became corruption, Mubarak, minister, National Democratic Party, parliament, freedom and revolution. That is what the conversation became changed into. So 80% of conversations in 2011 that mentioned Egypt, 80% of them started mentioning revolution, change and getting rid of Mubarak. And that shows you how powerful the media can be. Now I'm going to ask a question. How many of you are on Mixit here? Yeah. Mixit is the single largest platform in Africa. Single largest platform in Africa, and it's a South African created thing, which we really need to also take seriously. But we can come back to that. 2 points about the Arab Revolution. 2 points about it. Is it was led by young people, and in Egypt, when the elections came, now you have to know, Egypt is a country with 80 million people, and about 30 million people voted. In the elections, only 1 million people voted for revolutionary change. 29 million people voted against the revolutionary parties. They voted for the Muslim Brotherhood, and they voted for the very reactionary Islamists called the Salafists. And now, the Twitter conversations are shifting to how do we stop the Brotherhood, or how do we stop the Salafists, and so on. But what that shows us is that it is not enough because the Twitter class, and I use that very, very advisedly, and Facebook class, was mainly young middle class people. They were not the kids in the slums. The kids in the slums got their message through the mosque. So, as Alex pointed out, your campaign should never have only one area of focus. It shouldn't only be on Twitter. It shouldn't only be on Facebook. It shouldn't only be in the city. It should be as far on different platforms, but most importantly, I'm going back now to old days in revolution, and then I'm going to go to current days. How many minutes do I have? 3? 5. 5. Okay, so the first place I want to start is that not many of you would know the name Lenin or the name Kautsky or even the name Marx, Karl Marx. But it was indispensable for the modern socialist movement to have newspapers. Indispensable. The German Social Democratic Party, which is now the Socialist Party of Germany, SDP, the Socialist Party in Germany, was the most powerful social democratic party. And between 1890 and 1914, they had over 200 daily newspapers. 200 daily newspapers, which went to trade union members, to women, across Germany. So it meant that in those days, the real form that we used was media and, of course, mass meetings. Enormous amount of mass meetings and smaller meetings and so on. Lenin wrote a book called What Is to Be Done. And that book is very often derided. But one of the most important messages he gives you in that book is the possibility, the way in which a newspaper is used as an organizer. How when every one of us writes about our experience and what we see and how to do investigation and showing a policeman taking a bribe, showing someone being necklaced and so on, we do our own investigations on those things. And we all contribute to social media or to a newspaper. Then we all form part of it and more people read it because there are many voices in it. So that's just the tradition of all of this. I see the Killers is much more interesting than the Smiths. And I prefer Bob Dylan though. And who is that one? I think it's great. All right.
1 minute.
1 minute. I just want to give you an example of TAC. In the early days of TAC, and I want to come back to the question of giving money. In the early days of TAC, we made posters that we cut out of newspapers and we put it up, and Dina and other people here will be able to tell you that. But we were the first organization in the country in the late 90s to use email as a newsletter. To use an email newsletter. To send out, every week we send out an email newsletter. And so people, not only in South Africa, because what you must remember about the Arab revolutions and about HIV is that they created global communities, and Kony. They create global communities. They don't only create local communities, they also create global communities. So when you use your social media, you must understand that it goes beyond you. And through that, you're creating a community. And when TAC started, that's what we did. And he's not here, but Nathan Geffen set up our first website. And he took over the internet newsletter. But you'll never forget that TAC was a lot more than an internet newsletter and a great website. We also had songs that we sang. We developed a CD. We had our T-shirt, which is something we should have sold from day one. If we did that, 60 Rand a T-shirt these days. You sell it, I hope. Okay, so I need to buy a new one. So we made our T-shirt. That T-shirt, my favorite HIV positive T-shirt, is not one that was made in South Africa. It was one made in a place called Nepal, which is a small kingdom in the Himalayas, near India and all those funny places. And it was hand embroidered HIV positive, and a picture of the world on it behind. Now it shows you the power of photographs, the power of social media, the power of the media. And today we face a very dangerous situation in South Africa. We face the Malemaization of our politics, where people think stupidly, they act stupidly, and it's not only Malema, it's also people who talk with us as refugees. And that means that there's a very dangerous discourse being created in our country which will divide people. And the danger is that a lot of that happens on the internet, in talkback, on Facebook. You'll see the most horrible things. One of the biggest South African sites on pages on Facebook is the O South Africa, as an example. So what we need to look at is ways of bringing conversation to people that is knowledge-based, that shows how we can change society in a way that is positive, that gives people more knowledge, so that people don't only act on the emotion of Joseph Kony, but they act on the basis of the knowledge, which as Alex showed us very clearly, Joseph Kony, the story was gone. There was no knowledge behind it. There was a fake story, or not a fake story, a story that was very powerful, but 10 years late. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Saki. We're going to open the floor now, and I think the best thing to do is to take 3 questions at a time, and you can direct your questions either to Alex or to Zaki. So, does anyone have a question? Got one in the back there.
There's 1, 2, 3.
I don't think it's a question, rather than I would like to have a challenge based on what is happening currently now in South Africa in terms of the security bill. So there is engagement around that, and there's caucus around that. I'm wondering about this social networks communication and how they're going to be monitored in terms of the CIA. Because I remember last time, years back, there was multiple commission. What happened to multiple commission? If now we're going to amend or adapt to the security bill, how is it going to influence the way we want to mobilize and organize on the ground? And in terms of this technology, how the issue is to global warming, because now we are facing a really weather patterns, we are facing a really crisis. So how do we look at the issue of coal and nuclear, and really in terms of marketing, does marketing also speculate or articulate the dangers of advertising, like geo, etc.? Because we find out most of the workers, all the working class, are working in those factories. They're underpaid, and then at the end of the month, they can't even buy the money that they receive from the company that they're working for to buy the same production. So I just want to open up a debate like that so that we can see how the social internet and also the local life that we live and how it contributes to the global warming and also other issues of sustainability.
Okay, thank you, Zaki.
Let's take a few.
Is there any others? I saw some hands.
I just wanted to ask about access to information on the site. Like everything that's going on here, there's going to be
I can't hear, so can you hear?
Mike, no, just a bit louder.
Oh, access to the information from the seminar, the access to like the email or newsletter or something of that nature.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question. How would you, I guess it's to Alex.
Okay.
So Zaki was saying that Kony wasn't knowledge-based anymore. Well, how do we build campaigns that are knowledge-based? But very clearly what you said in your presentation my experience as somebody who works in the space, is that most people make decisions on an emotional basis, not rational. So how would you reconcile those two things? And then secondly, how would you use that for campaigns? How would you apply that to the kinds of issues that we deal with, that people education might deal with, or SJC might deal with?
Let's see if there were more. I think there were
some more. I know I saw, yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, my question is,
can we see you?
to Alex.
We can't see you.
I'm wondering, how do you see us as organization as we use social media? How impact it will play as organization on social media?
Okay, I'd like to answer your question first. I meant to make this point, but we are a very efficient, the whole world is a very efficient communication system, and we've got papers and we've got blogs, and we're kind of pro at selling ideas and kind of creating propaganda and making it happen, but it wasn't always like that. And if you look at where communication developed and started, and by that I include graphic design, which is a part of our everyday life everywhere, it started with real causes. It started with revolutions, and it started with social issues. And back in the day, your artists and your activists worked together. This doesn't happen anymore. What's happened is that the artists have almost split from the activists, and we kind of we inhabit two opposite ends of our spectrum, where arts is something quite niche and cool and elitist, and activism is and superficial, and activism is something on the other side which is quite
boring.
It's boring. It's inaccessible, and it's yucky. I mean, like, the average person doesn't want to think about these issues because it's like it's too much and it's not packaged properly. So I would say to you, you need to find your artists again. You need to find your writers and your designers, and communication needs to become a priority. In a business that sells shoes, your communications is an entire department, because they realize that if nobody understands what you're saying, they can't. They won't buy your product. So find your artists. That's kind of what I wanted to say. And then there was one other similar. I think for an organization like this, you need to break down your messaging and package it. And you need to decide who you're going to be targeting with that message for. Now, if you were to go to university and study marketing, or study marketing anywhere, they would teach you these skills, but they wouldn't teach it to you in an activism sense. They wouldn't teach you how to package ideas that will change society and lives. They'll teach you how to package stuff.
Sell things.
To sell stuff, yeah, to sell. I don't think there's a difference though. I mean, once you understand how to sell something, you immediately add an advantage, because you understand how to communicate with people. And I think that's, I didn't know much about Indifuna and Kwazi or any of your organizations until I met Greg. And it's not because I think it's credible. I think what you guys do is amazing, but it hasn't reached me. And when I went and looked for it, it's beautifully written and it's beautifully packaged, but it hasn't yet been made accessible to a bigger market. And I think that's your challenge for any cause, is to find the relevance for a big market.
So I'll start off by saying that where Alex left off, that all our work and our messages can't reach thousands, they have to reach millions. And the way in which we do it is by cooperating. So there are a number of people here. All the ones on Facebook, put up your hand. Okay? All the ones on Mixit, put up your hands. Right? Now, there's an important thing. When I was an activist, and we still do it today, all of us, well, I'm still an activist, but when I first was an activist, the most important way we communicated was with pamphlets, right? So just to get to Pupa quickly, I think that social media is an amazing way to stop trees being cut down. It's a really amazing way because many more people can read stuff now without having to do it on paper. We do it very cheaply and in a form that is sustainable. So I think social media can be very important for a sustainable environment and communication program. Now, on the secrecy bill and the information bill and stuff like that, what can never happen again, and will never happen again, hopefully, unless we can make sure that it never happens again, is that information can be kept secret by governments. That will never happen again. Because everyone has a cell phone, if you see some politician doing something wrong, you can get it sent off to someone else, and to someone else, and to someone else. You can get it on the internet. And in Egypt they tried shutting the internet down for a couple of days. But why didn't it work? Because it then means the society can't work. It really means the society can't work. The capitalists can't do their business, because all business is done electronically. The banks can't work properly. This one can't work properly. That one can't work properly. And it's gone. So they can't shut down the internet. Or they can, but only at enormous cost to society. In Syria, we heard from an activist the other day here. An activist went into Syria, helped get people medicines, helped get people stuff. And what we learned from him is they've shut in Homs and Hama and those places, they shut down the cell phone networks. But they can't stop people from getting satellite phones. And satellite phones you don't need MTN, Vodacom and all those sorts of things for. The satellite exists outside your country. So, as far as secrecy and so on goes, the ANC securocrats can try as much as they like, but they're not going to be able to silence us. They're going to make it harder and more difficult, but they're not going to be able to silence us.
Just on the topic of secrecy, millions of people and huge, big organizations with a lot of money have tried to shut down parts of the internet many times. The entire entertainment industry is up in arms because they can't stop piracy. And what happens is that, as soon as they do try and do it, there are people out there, and many of them, who see it as a game to work around that. And we have Anonymous. I don't know if you know about Anonymous. They're a massive organization online, and they
don't know each other.
Some of them know each other, but the point is that they don't operate with a face, because they are the faceless mass. And whenever they've started to do kind of harmful things, like they will hack websites, they will release information. But the point that they make over and over again is that information belongs to people, and you cannot ever shut them down. China is a censored internet country. I don't know if we could ever get to that state though. It's such a, I think it's a long time before we ever get to a state where we are like China, but it's impossible to silence people on the internet. Good luck to anyone who tries.
But speaking from honesty, from the activist element or angle, in our social space, post something on the wall, then we're talking about something that's very radical or emotionally or whatever. But we find that same activists, they don't respond to those things like that. But if you put a nice t-shirt, you tell love. Everyone, I like Lori. So I just want to understand that how that impact to indigenous language that I have. It seems that people, when they communicate these days, they don't communicate in a way that the information can flow. I can understand. I don't understand this NTY. So sometimes I get lost.
there's a language in Facebook that I use. I don't use those things, but when I got in, then I find this kind of language. So don't you think the social networks also have a way of changing people, the way they live, or it's changing the language, everything that they're trying to suit? You know, I mean, you know, capitalism is there, and it's making money, and it's suit for the masses and the others to follow. But I'm trying to get the sincere of this thing, because even a TAC activist, you write something about what NHI, National Health Insurance, what is their take about that? What are the engagement? We try to engage people on those platforms, but you find out, comrade, I'm not sure what is happening to them. Maybe their activism is away from the social, the economical issues. You know, so I'm not sure. But how do we really improve, you know, the communication and the way we speak? And when I came here, you find that people are sitting on Facebook or whatever, and a lot of books here. So what is that? What do you think is social?
You're a Luddite.
Another two questions, yes.
Okay, I mean, I like the point that we say that ANC will try to shut us down, and China is a censored country. But then there's also another bill which has been called for submissions, which they call General Intelligence Law Amendment Bill. I don't know how far is it going to take us, how far is it going to take us, because I mean there are fears that that bill is going to give the securocrats the power to go into our cell phones, into our emails, into the social media. Are we not going to end up as China? Yeah.
So I get that, or I believe that if you try and start a movement in social media, and it's not for the right reasons, you'll eventually be found out. So something similar to what happened to Kony. My question is, what if you try and start a movement with all the best intentions, and that community of people that are there just to latch on to your every success, to try and create success for themselves, and try and change your message purely for themselves? How do you manage those people to make sure that your message is still getting across?
Should we take one more round of questions?
I'm going to take your question.
Yes. Gavin, take another one.
Thanks, Greg. I think, thanks Alex for that presentation. When we're trying to get to the biggest possible market, I think you get to the risk of sensationalizing an issue. We saw that with Kony, we've seen it with other issues. And I mean, the last I heard of Kony was the founder running around naked in San Diego being arrested. And we haven't heard much about it since then. So I'm just interested to hear from you if you have any examples of social movements or organizations that have run successful campaigns that are sustainable. I think one that comes to mind personally is the VARs, online petitioning site, which have done really, really amazing work for 2-3 years now. I mean, every time there's a petition, I think they have 5-6 million people to sign on.
And that's all they do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So I'm just interested to hear if there are any examples of organizations that have managed to build support continuously, but kind of sustain that support over time.
I'll answer yours quickly. And go and have a look at Give and Gain. They list almost every single NGO cause online, and there are examples of more sustainable ones. I think the Educate a Girl Child went viral online as well, and that wasn't really an ongoing campaign. It was more a thought that they wanted to get going. But yeah, you do raise the risk of sensationalizing. You get people who are good communicators in this world, and you get sensationalists. And just as there are journalists of integrity, and you've got to kind of err on the side of communicating with integrity as well. I mean, someone should have said, listen, Jason, just calm down. Can we actually have a reasonable discussion about this? But nobody ever did say that because he was completely in control of it. And shame, he became an overnight sensation, so he went mad. I always say there should be a course at school, which is what happens if you go viral on the internet, because it could happen to anyone. And there's no skill, how do you deal with this? Shame, I feel sorry for you. Your question about how do you maintain a vision without other people leeching off your success. Can you be a little more specific about what you mean by that? Do you mean other people using your cause to better their own image?
Yeah.
I think that's, you know,
So for example, people latching onto you trending on Twitter, but
Yes.
using your hashtag to create
Yes.
their own business for themselves and that kind of thing.
Nobody's fooled by people like that. You know, I think there's what gets said online, and then there's what doesn't get said, but people watch. And I think that you can't worry about that. I mean, if your idea and your organization has success and integrity, people will avoid the spam links. But you know, if other people are going to help spread your thing as well, let them do it. There's statistics, something like 40% of people who are on Twitter don't actually interact; they just watch. And you know, as someone who has a bit of a profile as well, sometimes you know, people try and drag you into their stuff. They have these causes, and sometimes they're crazy, and then they kind of like at you in, and they hashtag you in, and they connect you, and they say that you said this and you said that. And what you could do is stand up and be like, actually tweet, you know, I didn't, I have nothing to do with this person, and further their little ego trip. Or you can literally just say nothing and let other people watch what's happening and decide for themselves, because they're the ones making the fool of themselves. You know, you don't have to defend yourself at every point.
You can see what a bad thing Twitter is. Not that what a bad, how people make fools of themselves by the way in which our Premier uses Twitter. The example is never get involved in an argument on these things. On Facebook it's fine because you can write more. You can write back and so on. But you cannot really explain yourself on Twitter. Twitter is just a way to share good pictures, good articles, and a one-liner. But never engage, because otherwise you drive yourself crazy and you drive the world crazy. So, so that's one thing I would say. But it is a difficult thing where people latch onto movements and so on. But you can't do. There's very little. The price we pay for freedom is that we have the good and the bad of freedom, and that's the price we pay for freedom. And that brings me back to things like the intelligence bill and so on. You know, there's such a bad group of bunch of legislation. I think one of the things that we should do is have a political seminar to discuss what is the meaning of having the traditional courts bill, the secrecy bill, the general laws amendment bill, because all these laws taken together form a plan. And I'm sure that there are more in the pipeline. And the internet can help us tweet about it. But if you believe that the ANC or the government is not listening into your conversations now, is not having access to our emails and all those things now, then you're living in a different world to the one I do. But what I can say to you is that they're trying to make that legal, and we have to stop them from making it legal. So it has both a good thing in that it allows, but there's also a bad thing that we all start becoming exactly the same. So that's my response to that. But I think it's overwhelmingly good.
Okay, so we can take two. It's 6:30 now. I think.
Yeah.
Look to close. Can I just take two questions? I've got two. Dali second, and then should we close? Okay.
This is something that's always bothered me. Is in South Africa, with the large socioeconomic gap, you kind of have two audiences you need to get through to. Is that a problem from a campaign's point of view? Or do you need to deal with that in a certain way? Do you need to modify your message perhaps based on the audience you're trying to reach? Do you need to worry about that?
Thank you. Okay. Is there one more question then we want to take after that, or should we close with that question? Okay, let's close with that question.
Yeah, the last one. My last question would be for the house, not for you. It's for, do you think there's a need for an alternative system than the one we're living now?
Yes.
Which is?
I'll tell you when I answer.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to talk about markets. Does this need to be on? I cannot stress enough how important it is to really think about who you're talking to. You can never speak to anyone, everyone. You can never. You can hope, you can have one primary target market and you can hope for a secondary. And depending on how influential that primary target market is will determine your broader reach. So sometimes you do hit products that, for Apple for example, is an incredibly good product. It's elitist, but the majority of opinion leaders in the world use it. Hence, it doesn't need to kind of, really care about this, the lesser affluent markets per se, because it becomes aspirational, it becomes the thing that everyone who's successful uses, When we look at how we're going to form our communications, who we're talking to is, I can't even explain how much time we spend on it. A company like British American Tobacco, for example, which sells cigarettes, puts its entire marketing budget of, say, $25 million a year into consumer research and really understanding those people. I think that, to kind of throw a whole bunch of darts and hope that it hits as many people as you can is naive. It's so important. And if it does mean speaking in indigenous languages, because actually your job is more with people who do not speak English on an everyday basis, then make sure you get communications people in who understand that, and people who actually live, in the everyday lives of the people you're targeting.
Just very quickly, I agree with everything that Alex has said, that you speak to different audiences, but they're messages which carry across everyone. So with the TAC message, for instance, that everyone has the right to life, there's not a person who could disagree with that except Thabo Mbeki and Mantashe Balalam and all those people in the ANC who now suddenly have never been there. So there are messages that touches us all as human beings. And that brings me to the question that I don't think I responded to, about emotion versus knowledge. And I think the two things go together. It is the way in which one carries across a message. If a message only has anger in it, I'm not going to read it. I definitely don't. But if a message has an anger that shows that there's something to be angry about, but there's also in it an understanding of why you're angry and what to do to change it and what the issues are, then I'm going to listen to it. If a message, someone puts a picture up on my Facebook of a lost child, I get so irritated. Not because I don't believe it's not a cause, but I think, where are you when we actually need to have safe streets for our children? Do you put that onto your board? It doesn't mean that I don't want to hear about those things. So it's important to link those things in all the messages, emotionally and so on. When it comes to the question of, and I just want to respond to Pupa again from a previous question. You said there are lots of books here. Yes, there are lots of books, and we should read them, but this is a museum. This is a museum. It is not a living book. Books are going to live on the internet. Books are going to live on people's cell phones. Books are going to live on iPads and Kindles and those things. And is there anyone from Equal Education here? Yeah. But the main thing about that is that when we look at our schools today, we say classrooms with desks and stuff like that. No, our schools we need to have a different vision of what we want our schools to look like. We don't want our schools to look like they looked when our great-great-grandmothers were alive. We want our schools to look like when our great-grandchildren are going to be alive. That's what we need to look at. So technology is vital, and it can only be used when we change society. Access to everyone. And that change for me means, I'm a socialist, but I'm a socialist that believes that you could combine the good parts of capitalism, the parts of the market that work, the innovation, the research, the enterprise, and so on. But you also need the power of citizens, the power of people to keep companies under control and to keep governments under control and to make sure that people live decently. And that is what we have to use our social media for, and that is what we have to use our technology for.
Thanks everyone for coming. The purpose of today's seminar was to stimulate a debate around social media and how it can be used by NGOs like ourselves. And I think hopefully this conversation will continue, and we'll start discussing what platforms are available like Facebook and Twitter, and new platforms like Pinterest, which I'm especially fond of. And I'm fond of it because it's a way of reaching people through things that they're interested in. And I think one of the things that's come out of this discussion for me is that we need to think how we're going to communicate with our members, so people who are part of our organizations and at different levels. So if you've got an upper class and then a pro class, and whether we should be communicating more on Mixit as opposed to Facebook, and where that leaves us and how we spend our money. So I'm a proponent of buying cell phones for members of organizations, and then perhaps developing apps in the future that you can use to communicate with your members. And that's one way to communicate. The next way to communicate is more vertical, and that's with people who want to come in and support or donate money. And I think what's come out of this debate for me is that there needs to be some sort of integrity when you are communicating your message to people outside of your organization, so it doesn't become sensationalist, and that's what Gavin picked up on. So I really want to thank both Zaki and Alex for spending this time here, and thank you to everyone who came through. Please check our website and take note of our other seminars that are coming up. The next one is...
Oh yes, the next one. Can I say something about the next one? The next one is a really great guy called Eddie Webster. He is one of the earliest activists of South Africa's labour movement and workers' movements. And it's going to take place here on the 23rd of April. And then the one after that is taking place in Khayelitsha, and it's Mzilikazi wa Africa and Firial Hafaji. And that is going to be on the state, money, and money, politics, and the state. And Mzilikazi wa Africa, people will remember, was the journalist that Taylor had arrested because he exposed the leases on the police station. So we really should mobilize for both those things to get some really good people here. Because Eddie Webster was at the beginning of stuff. Did I just take your speech? No. You see, Sifiso was, I didn't realize, they didn't tell me that Sifiso was, apart from handing over flowers. But this information is on the website.
Lastly, on behalf of the was, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.